Good morning, everybody. Our scripture reading this morning is from the Gospel according to Matthew. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 6. And this is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Hey, you may be seated, everyone. Hey, good morning. Welcome to Hope Church. My name is Drew. I'm one of the pastors here. And today actually marks a season around the global church where people are actually celebrating and anticipating the birth of Jesus, which we celebrate on Christmas. And so for you, whether you're new to church or whether you've been with us for a while, just want to say welcome, because this is kind of a historic season that we get to celebrate together. Now, where does this season of Advent come from, or this word Advent? It actually comes from the Latin word adventus, which basically means coming or arrival. The idea that God is with us, that God has taken on flesh. And the word actually, Emmanuel, this name actually means God with us. Like the wonder of that. Could you imagine what it would be like to walk and God is right here in our midst? Now, we as Christians, we believe that's the mystery, the wonder, and the power of the whole story of who Jesus is, that God is actually with us. And we actually are starting this sermon series, and it's called Fulfilled. And the reason why it's called Fulfilled is because throughout history, especially Judeo-Christian history, one of the things that's so unique about the Christian story is that many prophetic words were actually written and talked about before Jesus' arrival. In other words, Jesus is actually the fulfillment of so much longing and hope and prophetic words and insights that people gave about Jesus being born into the world. Now, here's what's so stunning, though, is that nonetheless, even though Jesus has fulfilled all of these different prophecies, so many of us today, we're like, I don't know if I want to follow this Jesus. I mean, can you imagine so many people even around the world? Even if there are all of these prophecies that have been fulfilled, many of us are still somewhat reluctant to say, yes, I want to follow that Jesus. Now, we're actually going to be investigating. Check out this passage that was just read for us. It says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Can I hear you say Bethlehem? Now, Bethlehem is significant in that it's called the house of David. Bethlehem means house of bread. And Bethlehem is basically south of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is basically the main kind of city within Judea that was significant for the Jewish people. But even Jerusalem was this small, no-name city compared to Rome. The Roman Empire spanned across that area in the ancient world. And so Judea was basically just this puppet kind of area. It wasn't even this place of significance. It was this no-name place. And so Bethlehem, if you can imagine, it's not even Jerusalem. It's like the small little town that's south of there. And it says during the time of King Herod. Now, Herod was actually appointed by the Roman Empire. So Caesar Augustus was the one that had all of the power, the military might. The Roman Empire was expansive over that region and throughout history, of course, mighty Rome. And then there was Judea, though. And King Herod was actually a king that was appointed by the Roman government to actually be a puppet governor over Judea. So you got to understand, King Herod is this person then, he's got power and significance. He's kind of known as the king of Judea because he's the king of this area, but he's been appointed by Rome. Now notice what happens. Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where's the one who has been born king of the Jews?" Now, these people, these magi from the east had come, or otherwise known as wise men, like these magi had come, and they're asking this question. Now, King Herod, you got to understand, hey, wait a minute, he's the king of the Jews. Is he getting backstabbed by Rome? Like, what's going on here? Now, but this question is asked to him, and notice what happens. It says, "We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed. He's like, what? I'm the king of the Jews. Who is this? What are you talking about? This king that is to be born, and all Jerusalem with him, when he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law. Now, who are the chief priests and the teachers of the law? They were the religious leaders. Now, why does he bring together all these religious leaders? Because for the Jewish people, the nation state, religion and state, a lot of it was intertwined. And so he's now thinking, okay, if there's a king and somehow there's been messages that this king is supposed to be born at a certain time, in a place, and whatever else it might be, I better ask these religious leaders what they think. And notice what these religious leaders say. He asked them where the Messiah was to be born. And notice what happens immediately. It says, in Bethlehem, in Judea, they replied. For this is what the prophet has written. Now, who is this prophet? The prophet he's about to quote is actually the prophet Micah. Micah was from the 8th century BCE. So before Christ, think about it, like close to 750 years before Jesus is born. This is when Micah is writing. And look at what Matthew does to quote from Micah. It says, but you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my Israel. Now, you got to keep in mind, this is roughly 750 years before Jesus is on the scene. Now, why do these chief priests and teachers of the law know this? Like immediately, like Herod could come to them and basically be like, hey, where's the Messiah supposed to be born? And the chief priests and teachers of the law, it's in Bethlehem. In Bethlehem, Micah chapter 5, verse 2. There weren't chapters and verses back then, but they could easily just say, Micah chapter 5, verse 2. Yes, in Bethlehem, that's where the Messiah is to be born. Now, who is the Messiah? See, in the history of Israel, they were a people that were constantly oppressed, put down, exiled, in captivity. So you can imagine for these people, they're people constantly longing, searching for a Messiah, someone who would save them and rescue them. And so all of these prophetic words would actually be given throughout the history of Israel, saying your deliverance will come through this Messiah, through this anointed one. And this anointed one, where will the anointed one come from? And it was commonly understood, the chief priests and the teachers of law, they easily knew, from Bethlehem. Of course, from Bethlehem, the house of David. Now, isn't that stunning? Like so readily, the teachers of the law, they know. They've been sitting on this for 700 years. Now, keep in mind, like 700 years is a long time. Like this past week, there was someone in our congregation, his grandmother passed away. She was 99 years old. And we were talking about, wow, she's lived such a full, good life. 99 years ago was 1925. So I was like, I wonder what happened in 1925. So was just looking up what would happen. And amazingly, in the early part of the 20th century, that's when women's rights just started to emerge. So 1920 is when in the United States, when women actually had the right to vote. Isn't that stunning? It was 99 years ago. That was before the civil rights movement. So you could imagine some of the ways that people of color had been mistreated for so many years. It's not that long ago, but 99 years, as I'm looking back at 99 years ago, that's before the stock market crash, World War II. My parents, their home country of Korea was occupied by Japan during that time. There's so many things that I was just thinking about, 99 years, even that I'm thinking, feels like ancient history to me. What's crazy is me now, I'm 45 years old, and nowadays, I meet people in our church community, and I moved to New York City in 2001, right before 9/11. And so when I tell them, I moved here in New York City in 2001, and they're like, that's funny, that's when I was born. And I'm like, that's not funny. That's actually really offensive to me. Why? What, you trying to say I'm old? No, I'm safely middle-aged now. I can admit it, And here I am, and I realize, even that, to some of y'all, you're 2001. Oh my God, was there an internet back then? I was saying, yeah, that's funny. But could you imagine 99 years? But can you imagine 700 years? The continental United States, or the constitutional United States, that was 1776, Declaration of Independence. That was 248 years ago. Just think about that. That's can you imagine 700 years? How long ago that is? It's in the Middle Ages. So could you imagine the people, like generation after generation, people are dying and passing. And people have been sitting on this prophecy. Oh yeah, the Messiah is supposed to be born in Bethlehem. The Messiah is supposed to be born in Bethlehem. It's common knowledge, the Messiah is supposed to be born in Bethlehem. But you know what, honestly, look at us. We're under Rome right now. There is no way anything is about to happen. I mean, isn't this stunning that here, these prophetic words have been given, but they've been sitting on it for years. Now, here's the thing about prophetic words. Look at this. A widely accepted list by conservative theologians cites about 300 prophecies explicitly fulfilled by Jesus. Isn't that stunning? Now, these are considered direct predictions of the Messiah or reflections of messianic themes tied to Jesus' life and mission. This is just one of hundreds of prophetic words that have been given about the Messiah. In a book that was written a few years ago, in Science Speaks, Peter Stoner, a mathematician, focused on just 8 specific prophecies: birthplace, betrayal, manner of death, and calculated the statistical probability of one person fulfilling them as 1 in 10 to the 17th power. Those are the chances that Jesus would fulfill every single one of those prophecies. And so Stoner actually gives this argument that this is one of the reasons why we should believe in Jesus. Now, isn't that stunning? Like, all of these prophetic words. Now, some of you are like, wow, really, is that true? In fact, some of you are fact checking me right now. But here's the idea. Like, isn't this stunning? Like, even the teachers of the law and the chief priests, they knew that Jesus was going to be born in Bethlehem. But they weren't really doing anything about it. Now, who knows? It had been 700 years. I mean, give them a break. They're probably like, maybe this prophecy isn't really a true prophecy. It's just kind of some wishful thinking that we're supposed to hope for. You can't blame them in some ways. They've been waiting for 750 years. But it's stunning because they so readily know the information. Oh, yeah, of course, the Messiah is going to be born in Bethlehem. Now, here's what it reveals, is that you and I, we can know a lot about Jesus. We can know prophecy after prophecy without actually knowing Jesus. We can know a lot about God and somehow miss God. And there's all these prophecies that are given that Jesus actually fulfills, and they're countlessly cited in historical documents, and yet people somehow miss Jesus. Now, that's incredibly sobering because, wait a minute, like I would think of myself as like, no, if he fits all of these 300 prophecies, of course I'm gonna follow him. Well, I'm sure a lot of these chief priests and teachers of law, they knew all these prophetic words and somehow they missed Jesus. Now, why is it that they would miss Jesus, or how do they miss Jesus? Well, I would contend actually that, one of the things is the reason why is because it's Bethlehem. Come on. Like, really? God, this is where your deliverance is gonna come? From this no-name town of Bethlehem? Yeah, sure, we know it's from the house of David, but it's not even Jerusalem. It's actually, it's a nothing place. Especially, again, if you know in that area, especially in the ancient world, the known area was really the Roman Empire. Rome was the center of everything. That's where the gravity was. That's where Caesar Augustus, with all of his power, is. And so if you were to compare like Bethlehem to Rome, come on, most of us, we're like, come on, Bethlehem or Rome? If I were to actually write a story about how God would come into the world for maximum influence in the world, what I would do is I would have God come through Rome. Because Rome is the center of power and influence. I was thinking of this, right? Like Rome is basically like New York City. This is New York, for me, this is why I'm drawn to this city. I want to be in the room where it happens, to quote Alexander Hamilton, or the city where it happens. This is where I want to be. This is Rome. And yet it happens in no name like Bethlehem. Or to give even another analogy, like just even thinking about like Manhattan being the center. And it's like Jesus is born in Staten Island. Now, some of you know that I dismiss Staten Island a whole lot. I just gave you a bone right there, though. There it is, right? Jesus, like just think about Bethlehem is like Staten Island. It's this forgotten place no one knows about. No one even knows it's a borough. But that's what Bethlehem is like. It's like this no-name place, especially compared to Rome. And it's so easy to miss Jesus because God comes to us in unexpected places like Bethlehem. So even though these prophetic words, even though these chief priests and teachers of law have heard and read and memorized all these predictions about the Messiah, at the end of the day, it's still Bethlehem. Like, come on, is God really gonna come to us through Bethlehem? You know, as I was thinking of words that would describe what Bethlehem is probably like, and maybe even the surprise of Christmas. Of course, New York does Christmas right. There's so much pageantry on Fifth Avenue. It's a beautiful time to be in the city. But the reality is, this Christmas story, especially even like cities like Bethlehem compared to Rome, it's hidden. It's lowly. It's insignificant. It's unexpected. This is not where you would expect the God of the universe, God in the flesh, to come into the world. You'd expect them to come through on Fifth Avenue. In fact, to make a grand entrance right above the Rockefeller tree or right under the Rockefeller tree or something like that. And yet it's so unexpected. So unexpected that so many of the people, even the chief priests who know about Jesus, actually miss Jesus. You know what's so stunning is it's so easy for us to really miss Jesus. We could know all about Jesus. You could come to church every single week and somehow miss Jesus. Isn't that stunning how that can happen? It happens throughout history. It happens to the teachers of the law, and it can happen to us. Here's what's crazy. Here's another passage that comes to us in the Gospel of Matthew, which is this historical account. Look at what it says in Matthew chapter 4. This is a prophetic word. Again, Jesus is actually quoting from another prophet here. He says, land of Zebulun and land of Naphtali, the way of the sea, beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles, the people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. Oh my goodness. Isn't this cool? Like, this phrase is used, and it actually comes to us from the book of Isaiah. The book of Isaiah, again, another prophetic word about a Messiah coming, a Savior, where people who are living in darkness will see a great light. I remember this past week, I was reading this passage and I was getting hyped. I'm like, oh my goodness, a great light has dawned. A light is coming. This is amazing. And notice what Jesus does. He quotes from the prophet Isaiah, which was also written about 750 years prior to Jesus entering the world. And look at what happens. Jesus makes this proclamation. A light is coming. Living in darkness, I have seen a great light, and a light has dawned. And then it says, from that time on, Jesus began to preach, repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near. I'm like, oh my goodness, Jesus, let's get it on. This is the time now that your kingdom has come. The Messiah has come. And here's what's so crazy. As I was reading this and I was getting hyped up, I'm like, Jesus, you're going to come out. This is going to be extraordinary. The Messiah has come. A light has been shown. And look at what it says immediately. It says, as Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. At once they left their nets and followed him. And then it says, going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Now, here's what's so stunning. Some of you are like, oh yeah, I've heard that story about the calling of the disciples before. Here I am. Here Jesus is quoting from the prophet Isaiah, a light has dawned. The Messiah has come. The world's about to change, everyone. And in this moment, I'm getting all hyped. I'm like, oh my goodness, Jesus is about to build. He's about to build the Avengers right now. He's gonna call Iron Man and Captain America and the Incredible Hulk and the Black Widow and like all of this like superheroes. I can't believe it. Jesus is basically gonna do this. And then it's like, oh, Jesus is walking along and he sees a fisherman. And that's who he calls to join his team to change the world. I'm like, what? I mean, this shows you how worldly I am. I was just thinking immediately, I'm like, oh, Jesus, if you're gonna start a movement to change the world, first, I would start it in Manhattan. And then I would basically, I was thinking like, who are the New York residents that I would call to be on my team? Because a light has dawned. We're gonna change the world here. And then I thought immediately, number one, I gotta choose Taylor Swift. Like, her influence is amazing all over the world. Like, she is perhaps the greatest pop star who has ever lived. Arguably, I should say. Now, listen, I'm just thinking New York residents. I'm just like, okay, Taylor Swift. Maybe get Aaron Judge, home run king, New York Yankees. I'm just trying to, like, who are the kings and queens of New York to join the Avengers? A great light has dawned, y'all. We need to bring the best of the best. I was just thinking the billionaires of the city. I'm thinking the most influential, attractive, like the powerful. This is how worldly I am. This is how I'm thinking, like, as I'm getting hyped about Jesus building the Avengers. And here Jesus is basically like, he's walking along and he's basically like, he meets the young college student from Ozone Park, Queens, who's working at the sales desk at Best Buy on 6th Avenue. And he says to this young college student, hey, come follow me. And I'm like, Jesus, like, we could get Taylor Swift. Like, you're the God of the universe here. Like, what's going on? Like, what? I mean, no offense to this guy. I mean, Best Buy, that's great. Like, I get it. Now, by the way, if you're working at Best Buy, I'm not trying to throw shade at Best Buy or anything, or about where you're working, anything. Like, I'm just saying, like, the most uncommon places that we would expect God to be moving and working. And yet this is who Jesus calls, this no-name fisherman preparing their nets, who the world would dare not choose, especially considering Rome and all of its power. Jesus, why not come in the midst of the Roman Empire as one of the Caesars? And yet he comes in Bethlehem. And all these unexpected, lowly, and insignificant ways. It's so easy to miss Jesus. I mean, because, see, the ways of God are so upside down. They're so different than the ways of the world. They're so different than the value systems that I carry of what meaning and significance look like. And this is not against anyone who's ascended any kind of ladder or has a disproportionate amount of influence, because you see Christians from all shapes or sizes come to follow Jesus. It's simply to say that the values of God are just so different than the values of the world. Even me, here I am as a pastor, and as I'm thinking about building this Avengers team, it's like, it's so different than who I would have chosen. And yet Jesus chooses these different disciples to follow him, because the value systems of God are so different. They're hidden, they're unexpected, they're lowly, they're seemingly insignificant. And the question for me and for you is, we could know a lot about God, we could know a lot about Jesus, but the question is, do you notice Jesus? Have you found Jesus? Are you looking for Jesus in even the unexpected places? I was thinking about for my own life this past week. This morning I was actually praying. I was like, God, what are the unexpected, lowly places that you've shown up in my life recently that maybe I did not notice you or even look or think about seeing you? And immediately felt this impression that like God immediately reminded me of this really bad argument I got in with my wife Tina on Friday night. And I was like, man, I shouldn't have prayed this prayer. For God, like, what are the ways that you're coming to me? And I realized, like, Tina and I, we got into a pretty bad argument on Friday night, and it was over families and our holiday plans coming up. I'm sure none of you ever get into these arguments. I mean, this is just me. But anyhow, Tina and I, we get into this argument because basically we're trying to negotiate, like, how much time we're spending with my family, how much time we're spending with her family. And so I get mad at her because I think she's being ungenerous towards, like, spending time with my family. And meanwhile, she's not mad at me, but she's mad at my family because she thinks that my family's taking advantage of me. I'm mad that she's mad, even though it's not at me, it's at my family. Why are you mad at my family? How can you be mad at my family? That's selfish, being mad at my family. So now I'm mad that she's mad. Then she gets mad that I'm mad at the fact that she's mad, because she's like, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at your family. And either way, then I get mad. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, we'll stop there. But I mean, it was basically this awful moment of just like, we're just mad. And I was just praying. I was like, God, what are the moments that you've come to me in the unexpected, seemingly insignificant, lowly places, the hidden places? And I felt like God was saying to me, I came to you even in that fight. I was like, the way that you had such an ungenerous spirit to Tina and thought ill of her when she was simply trying to protect me. And I felt like God was saying, like, yeah, I want you to know what that feels like to prejudge someone and to not be generous towards them and to miss out. And as I was reflecting on that, and I'm sobbing, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, Tina. You know, like it was just this moment of like, wow, God comes in places that I wouldn't expect, seemingly insignificant moments. But how many of us, and how about me even, do I have the courage to walk into the places where I don't think God is there? I think God is in my preaching. I think God is in my leadership of the church. What a loser. Sorry. But I mean, it's just, this is what happens, though. God is in the spectacular. He's not in the mundane. He's not in the insignificant. He's not in the lowly. This is what we think. We think he's not in the insignificant. And yet, what if God is actually moving and working all around us? And the question for you and for me is, will we notice and will we say, God, I want to be open. I want to be open to the ways that you're speaking to me, to the ways that you're trying to teach me, to the ways that you're trying to get my attention. Because it's so hard to get into my brain, and it's so hard to actually break my hardened heart. How many of us today, we are so distracted with life? You're running so hard, that career or that relationship or whatever it is that occupies so much of your attention. And meanwhile, Jesus is showing up all around you, and the reality is you're just too busy to actually give him any attention. Or some of us have been so wallowed in our own kind of difficulties or sufferings and our pain and our anguish that it's so hard to turn our attention to God. Or maybe we're just having a great season and we're just like, oh, I love Christmas and I love Fifth Avenue and I love the pageantry of this season. And the reality is we go through life and we're missing out on the hidden reality of Jesus. You know what's amazing is that Jesus, in the midst of all of this, what he says to these disciples, the people that no one would expect, this is the crew that God is going to actually change the world through. The fact that we actually sit and we stand here together because of this group of ragtag people that changed the world. And this is who God uses. And you know what the beautiful thing that Jesus does is, in the midst of such an insignificant, lowly, hidden place like Bethlehem and then Nazareth and the Sea of Galilee, Jesus sees these fishermen just minding their own business. They're just going about life, doing whatever they do, preparing their nets. And Jesus says these words that would forever change their lives. He says, come. Follow me. Follow me. Those are the same words that come to us today. It's the invitation. Will you come follow me? In the midst of all the distractions of this season, of Christmas, will you follow me? Amidst all of the pain that some of us might be going through, will you follow me? amidst all of the busyness of our careers and end of year stuff that we have going on, or family drama, Jesus is asking the question, will you follow me? He says, come, follow me. What if Jesus is closer than you think? What if he's just been trying to get your attention? What if the question for you and for me is, will you follow this Jesus? And what if it was a grace that today in the midst of everything that you have going on in your life and in mine, and all the ups and downs, and all the lowly moments, the hidden moments, the unexpected, what if the invitation for you and for me is, will you follow Jesus? Will you reorient your life to say, yeah, Jesus, I want to follow you?